If you're clicking on this video, it means you're at least a little bit interested in the new weapons that come from the Onslaught activity within the Into the Light event. There are going to be more that are added to the loot pool over the course of the next few weeks, but right now I want to take all of these weapons, get a good look at what they can roll with, what the god rolls are, and what you should be looking to get out of the activity. There are some very unique rolls that no other weapons in the game can get, so a lot of these Brave Arsenal weapons are actually first of their kind, and do something that no other weapon can. Not only are we going through what I feel the god rolls are, we're going to be ranking them on a tier list of what you should make a priority, as well as what you can keep an eye out for just when you're getting random drops from doing the activity. Each one of these weapons is really strong and can get some really cool rolls, so stay tuned to see what the god rolls are and where they end up on the tier list. So firstly, going through the contents of the tier list. At the very top of the tier list, what you would probably consider the S tier, is our highest ranking category, in which it means put this video in a separate tab, load up Onslaught, and get to work. Our second category from the top of the tier list is our priority list, and there's something you're probably going to want to make a priority. Then we have the weapons that aren't necessarily at the top of the priority list, but they still made the list, and they provide some really cool, interesting, or viable rolls. Like I said, almost all of these weapons have super unique rolls, or rolls that make them the best in class. Whether they do something that no other weapon can do, have a roll that no other weapon can roll with, all of these weapons have something to look out for. Then our last section in the category is it's a decent drop. But in this last category, these are ones that you want to keep an eye out for. Even if they might not be the best, they provide something that's definitely viable, and for a lot of players might be better than what they already have. These are good options as well. And now that all of our categories are defined, let's get to placing our Brave Arsenal weapons into these categories. When we decide all of our weapons god rolls and rankings, it's going to be with what I feel that weapon can accomplish best. So there might be a god roll for specifically PvE or PvP, but you'll see that unique or groundbreaking god rolls are usually the god rolls that make it on this list. If it doesn't accomplish something extraordinary, unique, or new, then I probably won't consider it the god roll for that weapon, whether it be for PvP or PvE. So starting with our first weapon, we're going to be looking at what was once the scourge of PvP, the Recluse. Back in the day, Master of Arms was the go-to perk, but now it comes with target lock, but target lock was nerfed. So I'm actually not really looking at either of these, and that might be a little bit of a hot take, but they've changed Master of Arms to only provide 15% damage increase as opposed to its 20% in the past. Master of Arms can proc even when you're getting a kill with a different weapon, much like Harmony does. But we can also get a 15% damage buff from something like Frenzy instead. Frenzy doesn't have the kill activation requirement, lasts for a similar amount of time, and comes with additional stat benefits. So I actually think it's easier to proc and gives you more at the same time. In something like Trials of Osiris, where engagements can be drawn out, Frenzy is super easy to activate, whereas when you get a kill with Master of Arms, by the time you get a kill in something like Trials of Osiris, most of the work is already done, as 1 out of the 3 eliminations to win the round are already had. But even if I were to go with the route of using Frenzy, and what I feel is the best perk in this first trait column, as well as our famed Ricochet rounds, and maybe say a Hammer Forged Rifling or a Full Bore, we want that range, our stability is in a good spot, we can add on a range masterwork, maybe a targeting adjuster. 47 stability and 70 range with this set of perks is actually pretty impressive. This is actually a roll that comes on the multi-mock. So what I would consider our PvP god roll is already available on another 900 RPM submachine gun. Now they are different weapon slots, so if you're wanting to use a certain weapon in one slot and use your submachine gun in the other, that could be a benefit of this weapon over the multi-mock, but otherwise they're essentially the same roll, even if there's slight differences in the stats. Multi-mock also does have a better origin trait for PvP, that's why with this weapon I would look more towards PvE. Desperate Measures being a new trait is very enticing. You can see it also matches well with the new origin trait, as if you're on a light subclass you can grant yourself grenade energy, and Desperate Measures can take advantage of those grenades for a damage buff. Being that it's a void weapon, it can synergize with things like Repulsor Brace. You can see we also have Destabilizing Rounds, which also integrates well with void builds. But there are ways to apply volatile, such as a fragment or different exotics such as Gyrfalcons. Theoretically, if we were to spec into a grenade-based combat loop, having both Indomitability and Desperate Measures, as well as the ability to get volatile rounds from grenade kills, we actually have a pretty good combat loop that can give us volatile rounds and a source of survivability, all contained within the package of a single weapon. That's why I would go with this PvE roll, alloy mag for when you run through the magazine since we're not using something like Subsistence, and probably backup mag mag so that we have a little bit more length on it. Now comparing this to something from the past like Funnel Web, where it's also in that void slot, it's a 900 RPM SMG, and the god roll was usually something like Frenzy, we're now able to find some synergy in this new perk with Desperate Measures that also benefits from the Origin trait, can go along with the fragment that grants us volatile rounds, and has the potential to give us a 30% damage buff over a 15. We can then also pair that with Repulsor Brace to increase our survivability and still get decent uptime on that from a fast reload speed from Alloy Mag and maybe some armor mods. So that's going to be the first god roll that makes it on the list. But where are we going to place it? Honestly, I think there are other SMGs that can fulfill a similar role, but none can get this exact role, and it does pair quite well with a grenade build. So because of that, I'm going to say that it made the list. Next up, we have Elsie's rifle. This is actually my favorite pulse rifle archetype in PvP. The OG Relentless from Trials of the Nine and Regix's Claymore was my first time using 340s and actually kind of falling in love with them. So I'm honestly really excited for Elsie's rifle because I actually got my hands on both of the god rolls for PvP, and even though we can get some really cool combos such as Repulsor Brace and stabilizing rounds for PvE, that's definitely not where this weapon shines, as there's other weapons that can get similar roles on better weapon types and better archetypes. So we're going to lean more on the PvP side, and that's where, honestly, right off the bat, Zen Moment and Keep Away are what catch my eye. Mostly Zen Moment because it comes in that first trait column, which isn't always that common. And the main kicker here is that because Zen Moment's in the first trait column and Headseeker's in the second trait column, we actually have ourselves a very unique role that nothing else can roll with right now, at least not in this archetype. If you're looking at other stat monster pulse rifles in the same archetype, something like the Messenger can't roll with this. So here you have the potential for a super unique role that drastically increases the consistency of the weapon in general, but also the 2-burst ability of this weapon and how consistently you can pull it off. You'd be surprised how much work Headseeker puts in if you've never used it before, but also Zen Moment affecting the control you have on the weapon. As long as you have decent aim, you can expect to walk out of gunfights securing a 2-burst. I would definitely go with ricochet rounds to help with the stability, as well as boost our range a little bit. And with our barrel, it's a little bit tougher because I want to help out our recoil direction, but I don't want to spend our weapon mod on a counterbalance, even though it helps out a lot. So I'd love to go with extended barrel to get the same +10 to range that Hammerforge would allow, but also reap the benefits of having a little bit higher recoil direction. That way we can apply a targeting adjuster to increase our aim assist a little bit more, and this will make our 2-burst ability even better because Headseeker also applies +10 aim assist. So these stack up to a total of +15 when Headseeker's active. And this definitely makes a big difference because the whole point of this archetype is to secure 2 bursts, and Headseeker's helping out in both ways as it provides increased aim assist and an increased crit multiplier. Top it off with the range masterwork, and we have a really nice stat package with high range letting us reach up to 38 meters with no damage fall off, and decently high stability to keep our aim assist and accuracy in good standing with continuous fire. In addition, both our stability and Zen Moment will contribute to us being able to withstand flinch from our enemies. I'm telling you guys, this is a top tier role and it's easily obtainable through Onslaught. This thing feels and performs amazingly in the Crucible, and you can consistently pull off 2 bursts like it's nothing. So we're gonna go ahead and throw this on the tier list, and we're actually gonna rank it really freaking high. If you're a PvP player, this is a no-brainer. Whether you just like the archetype or you need a weapon for longer engagements, this is one that you want to have on the ready. Keep in mind these perks will be enhanceable come the final shape, so you have good base stats on the weapon, and you're not going to be missing out from the additional stats from enhanced perks. Overall, this is a super consistent and reliable option when it comes to a pulse rifle you can main in the Crucible. And next up we have Edge Transit. This one is super interesting and there's lots of good perks to go through. I'm just going to tell you right now, for my PvE folks out there, many of you guys know grenade launchers are tricky when it comes to their damage. You can't use spike grenades and just yoink up your blast radius, which then makes it dumb to use explosive light and spike grenades at the same time, which is something a lot of people don't know. Now, Explosive Light provides a massive damage increase with 60% increased explosive damage. Keep in mind this doesn't apply to impact or detonation damage, only the explosive portion of the damage. And this is kind of why I said grenade launchers could be sort of tricky, because you have to know the difference between those things when speccing out a god roll. Now, Explosive Light's really cool for, say, a situation where you're in a boss damage phase and you have a teammate popping a rift or maybe a bubble. So everybody's using their supers and you get a bunch of orbs and that charges up Explosive Light. You then have a bunch of grenades for your grenade launcher that deal 60% increased explosive damage. But when there's a mini boss or a champion, or maybe you're just fighting a boss and you don't have these supers being popped, explosive light's not going to net as much total damage as it would otherwise. This is why I actually really like bait and switch. Instead of the technical aspect lying in having to pick up orbs, you're just having to be conscious about how you proc bait and switch. Anybody who's already familiar with this playstyle should have no problem applying this to edge transit. Bait and switch got decreased by 5% in terms of its damage increase, but 30% is still really solid and it lasts for 10 seconds. And because of the playstyle bait and switch activates, and me just already being a really big auto-loading holster fan, I think these go together extremely well. This way you can still get a massive damage bonus whether you're in a boss damage phase instance where everybody's popping their supers, or you're just on your own, maybe in a smaller fire team or a solo activity, and you want to proc your own damage buff and it still be top tier. Auto-loading gives you the ability to cycle through your weapons and not have to worry about reloading edge transit. This way you can easily proc bait and switch over and over again. Now when it comes to the complication of using spike grenades already got nerfed sort of recently, and blast radius will slightly affect the damage that you deal, so I kinda just say F that noise and I go with augmented drum instead. Especially because we're using auto-loading holster and we don't have to worry about our reload speed being trash because we auto-load anyways. That gives us one more in the magazine, and we can also go down here and add a backup mag to give us an additional one in the magazine, so we have 8 rounds instead of 6. This means we can proc bait and switch, dump 8 mags in the 10 seconds that we have with the damage buff, and swap to something like say a Wither Horde and get ready to proc bait and switch once again. And when we do it and we swap back to edge transit, it's already loaded again from auto-loading. I probably go with quick launch so you get better velocity, a more straight trajectory, and you get better handling so you can swap to your GL faster. Probably another 10 velocity from our masterwork, but you can also go with handling as well. Although having 8 rounds in the magazine instead of spike grenades means that you're gonna go through ammo faster, that also means you'll just have an overall higher DPS if you can get out all those rounds within a damage phase. Now the Cataphract from Trials of Osiris can actually get this role as well, and it can also get explosive light, but they're the only 2 weapons in this game that can get this role. So if you don't want to play Trials of Osiris to get a grenade launcher that's top tier in the end game, you can instead play Onslaught and test your odds at getting this god roll. In terms of another rare role that's more focused towards ad clearing instead of DPS, we can actually go with Deconstruct and Chain Reaction as well, but again Chain Reaction is getting nerfed, and although this is a good role, it simply plays a different role in the heavy slot, and so it's up to the player's preference. Like I was saying earlier, I like being able to passively activate my damage buff and not have to reload my weapon, so I opt in for this as my god roll. And in terms of where this goes on the list, I would actually put this pretty high up on the priority list. Next up, we have Luna's Howl. This weapon's making a pretty heavy return right now, and at first when I looked at this cast of perks, I honestly wasn't too excited. Incandescent really caught my eye, but I think the premier perk on Luna's Howl is Magnificent Howl, so I'm really looking at where this perk can shine on this weapon. And right off the bat, what I think the god roll is and the best way to use Magnificent Howl is in order to proc Heal Clip. Both of these perks require the motion of reloading in order to be active. Start putting in those crits to work your way up on stacking Magnificent Howl, finish off your magazine or get your kill, reload to activate Heal Clip, and then also have additional range and damage to continue getting kills and reactivate Heal Clip. It has the potential for a beautiful gameplay cycle. You're gaining both additional range and damage from Magnificent Howl as well as increased survivability from Heal Clip. It's not going to be as good with crowd control as Incandescent, but you can still blow through ads and consistently rack up high damage dealing rounds as well as proc Heal Clip. I would throw some armor piercing rounds on there in order to benefit from the additional range, but also be able to penetrate targets and shields. Probably Hammerforge for the flat boost range, a range masterwork so that you can reach out further since we don't have explosive payload, and then backup mag so that we have a couple more rounds in the magazine to activate with Magnificent Howl. This is another really good god roll, but I don't know if it's quite as good as the other hand cannon on this list, so I'm actually gonna place it on the priority list. It's a super unique role that will only get better when we get the enhanceable version of the perks. Although you're missing out on crowd control potential, if you just use this with something like a Waveframe Grenade Launcher, you will be set, and you'll have a really solid top tier primary that can actually easily spec into a solar build. Next up, we have Mountaintop. And I'll tell you right now, my dudes in the Crucible, y'all better watch out. This thing undoubtedly has insane PvE potential, but at the same time, it's not a whole lot that we haven't seen before. I don't want to just increase the damage of a single shot, because on prolonged damage phases, it's not going to be as important. This sort of has like a parasite-like flow to it, and that's not what I want to use this weapon for. Harmony's a really decent damage buff, but I don't want to have to secure a kill on a different weapon to be able to do decent DPS with this. Similarly, I don't want to have to focus on a group of adds in order to proc one for all. Not even going to start with this. 4 pulse really nice, especially because this is a special weapon, so we get the plus 15%, but I can actually get the same 15% that's not just applied to mini bosses or bosses by using Frenzy. And you can pair that with a host of things, such as Ambitious Assassin to overflow the mag, Impulse Amplifier to get drastically better reload speed and velocity from the micro missile, Lead for Gold for ammo economy, I have auto-loading holster, which is probably what I would go for, as I've already mentioned it's one of my favorites. So between that and Impulse Amplifier, they're probably my go-tos. Demolitionist could actually be really nice with Indomitability as well. This gives us both a damage buff, a means to reload, and a kickback to our grenade energy that totals out to 15% each time. But I'm actually going to veer away from the PvE role for a second because I don't feel that's where this weapon shines as much. I actually think you can achieve a role similar to this that accomplishes the same thing on other grenade launchers. So I'm going to look at what the Mountaintop does that's a little bit more unique. Now, as you see here, the micro missile frame is now intrinsic to the Mountaintop, and I think by going with Impulse Amplifier, not only are we getting way better reload speed, but we get to shoot up that velocity, which is really nasty in tandem with the micro missile frame. Now, you can go for spike grenades to get the insta-kill on hits, which is always reliable, but I'm actually going to go with sticky grenades, and we can use it to combo with other damage sources in order to get a kill. And this is where Frenzy really shines. We can set traps with sticky grenades or aim directly for our targets and deal large chunks of damage, but with Frenzy applied, we can actually do a good bit more damage, and that will help us secure a kill. Plus, competitive engagements, whether it be in comp or Trials of Osiris, can be prolonged just enough to allow you to activate Frenzy, and you're not reliant on having to first secure a kill in order to get the best version of this weapon. I would then opt into applying Quick Launch and a Velocity Masterwork in order to get really high velocity and a good handling stat as well. This means that we can swap to Mountaintop really quickly, and we have a minimal delay in our shot's travel distance, allowing us to quickly deal damage or set traps with our sticky grenades. Throw on a quick axis sling for the extra swap speed benefits, but you have a snappy but also deadly weapon that's really high in utility. I cannot enough hype up how much playmaking potential this weapon has. When it comes to our tier list, it's easily going to be put up in our S tier. This weapon's available to get right now, so when you get the chance, hop in Onslaught and secure this so that you're not missing out. Next up on our list we have the Falling Guillotine. This sword being reintroduced has made yet another splash. It comes with yet another unique perk combination that no other weapon can roll with. Not only is this perk combination unique, but it also has the potential for the best sword DPS in the game. The combination specific to this sword and this sword only would be Frenzy and Surrounded. Usually we see Frenzy in the second slot, and never have we seen Frenzy and Surrounded being able to be applied at the same time. 35% damage increase from Surrounded plus the 15% increase from Frenzy is the highest damage boost we can get on swords. It also doesn't require you to charge it up like it would with something like Whirlwind Blade, and it doesn't necessarily need priming like Bait and Switch does. Although I'm not a big fan of Surrounded, and I'd honestly much rather probably use something like Bait and Switch, you can't deny how unique and powerful this role is. Having to stop to activate Bait and Switch every 7 seconds, and the downtime of having to swap off the sword really doesn't compare to the pure damage output that is possible with Surrounded. You'd want to use Swordmaster's Guard for the extra charge rate, and Jagged Edge for the extra impact. Get a Masterwork thrown on there and maybe a boss spec, and you have the potential for the highest DPS sword in the game. Although it's not by a very large margin, it can be reassuring to know that you have the best of the best, and it's impressive that Bungie can continue to one-up themselves. Honestly, feel free to go for any combination of perks that suits you, but if you want to have access to the newest and greatest that Falling Guillotine has to offer, this would be it. In terms of where it would be at on the tier list, I actually think what it offers is very niche and isn't that far ahead of other swords, so I would actually put it down here in our last tier, as it's still a very good drop, and it's definitely a good thing if you get it, but it definitely isn't something that I feel like I need to go out of my way to get, or else I'm missing out on something. Our next weapon on the list is the Hung Jury. I actually think this is the only weapon on the list that gets 2 roles put on the tier list, just because the PvE and the PvP version are so good. So starting off with PvE, Firefly is actually a longtime favorite by the PvE community. It's multifaceted in the sense that it provides both reload speed and crowd control potential, but I'm actually going to go for explosive payload instead. Explosive Payload is my go-to perk because of its 10 to 15% damage increase on the weapon. It allows for a little bit of AoE and also is pretty good at staggering enemies. I can also then pair that with Kinetic Tremors, which also has AoE, is good at helping out with crowd control, scales up the DPS potential for this weapon, all for the low cost of just getting hits with it. As much as the reloading perks here are enticing, nothing can beat that value. Between that and Explosive Payload upping our damage and our AoE, I think it makes for a nasty combo on this weapon. Maybe something along the lines of Tac Mag, Corkscrew Rifling, and Reload Speed Masterwork makes this weapon all that much better. And that's why on our tier list, we're gonna go ahead and place it right here, as it most definitely made the list as a really good weapon. It's very effective and it feels good to use. It can definitely hold up in the endgame, and there's really not that much more you could want from a weapon like this. For my folks that are looking to see how effective Hung Jury can be in PvP, I have another role for you. This one is actually what Hung Jury was initially known for, and still is actually very famous for. The 3-tap potential that Box Breathing provides is unbeatable. With this weapon, we can get 3 taps at some insane ranges, let alone that being at 180 RPM. Box Breathing allows for a tremendously fast time to kill with very practical range, and honestly, if you spec it out well, high ease of use as well. This has been showcased before and it's tried and true in the Crucible. I actually have the previous version of Hung Jury with no distractions, because no distraction procs at right around the same time as Box Breathing. This means that as you're aiming down your sights to get your damage and aim assist bonus with Box Breathing, by the time you're ready to send off your first shot, you're also benefiting from no distractions. This gives you that much more of a guarantee on the consistency of the weapon and how much more likely you are to get that 3-tap. This is an awesome role to have in your back pocket, especially when it comes to longer range maps such as Eternity. And just because this archetype of scout rifles has such amazing range, I'm not afraid to throw on steady rounds as well, letting us retain our aim assistance over time and also gather some more flinch resist. The same goes for why I would use small bore. To go with that, I'd probably boost our stability once again, just because we're not missing out on any practical use of range. And then probably throw on a targeting adjuster as well, just to get our aim assist a little bit higher in tandem with Box Breathing. Once again, this is an insanely consistent scout rifle. It has the range that you look for in a scout rifle, blazing fast time to kill, and really good ease of use. It does not get much better than this, especially on a legendary. That's why on our tier list, we're actually going to be looking at this one in our top slot. You got to get a non-slot, get yourself one of these rolls. Next up, we have Forbearance. This is yet another weapon that's getting hit by the chain reaction nerf pretty soon, but if you want to take advantage of this amazing god roll before it gets nerfed, Ambitious Assassin and chain reaction is what it is famous for. If you see that drop, definitely take it for a spin, see what the craze is about, because it really is just that good. It serves a purpose and it does it really well. But just because of the nerf to chain reaction, and the fact that there's some other weapons out there that can take care of crowd control, I'm actually going to re-gear this Forbearance to be used for more casual DPS. When there's a champion or a high level major that you got to take care of and you want to preserve your heavy ammo, activating Bait and Switch is an easy way to get a nice damage buff on command. It's one of the highest damage buffs that exist right now that have a practical trigger, and it's one of my favorites because if you're technically used to the requirements, it's very easy to consistently gain this buff. Now I have to outline Demolitionist here, because like we've said before, with Indomitability, there's actually plenty of potential to be had there. If you're using a light subclass, you could spec into your grenade and get similar utility that you would get out of something like Ambitious Assassin. All the meanwhile, you're getting 15% back as well. Now I wouldn't want to limit this role to that playstyle, just because Ambitious Assassin is here as well, but both are very good options. Ambitious would just be my pick here. Throw on some high velocity rounds to go with that, and maybe a quick launch for velocity and handling. Let's get a bit of a snappier reload, and probably something like a major spec. This way it's easier to kill chunkier enemies on the fly, and that's really what this whole role is made for. So let's take a look at where this is going to end up on our tier list. I'm thinking we're going to put it up in our priority list. Anybody who doesn't have a waveframe GL of this caliber is really just missing out, so definitely make it a priority. Next up, we have the Blast Furnace. This is yet another weapon that has a ton to offer. There's honestly so many different good roles, and I'm definitely looking at this one more for PvP than for PvE. Although it can be good for both, I do think there are other things such as Hung Jury that can fill the PvE role for this weapon. But on the other end, that can't be said for PvP. So we're going to lean into that, and we're going to see what this weapon can accomplish accomplish, as it can accomplish quite a lot. The way that I'm going to take it is a little bit different than you might expect. I very highly value consistency on a weapon. I think it's nice to not have such steep activation requirements and able to use a really good perk on a weapon. So although in PvP, Desperate Measures, Rampage, One for All, Firefly, and Kill Clip could all be really good, I'm gonna kind of skip over all of them and just end up on Frenzy. Now I actually think Rapid Hit's a really good choice here, and if yours drops with Rapid Hit, definitely don't count it out. But for what I'm gonna consider the God roll, I think a damage increase of 15%, as well as increasing our reload speed and handling at the same time without requiring a kill, I think it's pretty hard to beat, especially at the ranges that the Blast Furnace can hit. It's very easy to draw a gunfight long enough for Frenzy to be active. This will help you in securing your 2 burst even easier, and that's not even while considering the next perk in column 1 that we're going to be talking about. Although Zen Moment is a freaking beast in PvP, especially on an archetype like this, where you're shooting 4 bullets at a time in your burst, securing that 2 burst with Headseeker is just that much easier. And since we're missing out on some of the benefits of Zen Moment, I would definitely go with steady rounds to help with our stability and gain some control on the weapon. I would use small bore to increase our stability once again, gain some extra range which increases our accuracy as well, and then another stability boost with our Masterwork. This gives us the potential to have near max stability while having an insanely high range stat, and we're still reaching a damage drop-off point of almost 40 meters on this weapon. This is right about where you want to be for the competitive range of a pulse rifle, and with your stability and range you should have no problem being accurate and resisting flinch. Headseeker and Frenzy are going to increase your lethality and make 2 bursts that much easier to get. If you never got to use Blast Furnace back when Black Armory existed, I say that this roll right here is easily better than the old one, and it's an amazing feeling weapon and has super competitive lethality. Don't sleep on this, give it a shot. So let's go ahead and put it on our tier list. I definitely think this goes in our top slot. Once again, there's not a lot of weapons that can accomplish what this one does. If you want some of the best, this is where you can get it, and Onslaught makes it so easy with an abundance of drops and the ability to attune for your weapons. Being that Headseeker is technically a damage increasing perk as well, being able to have that and Frenzy on at the same time is actually kind of insane. Like I said, that is going to be a very consistent weapon. When this weapon is ready to be made available, come April 30th, definitely go get yourself a Blast Furnace. Next up we have the Hammerhead. This thing was a favorite in both PvP and PvE, but now in PvE machine guns are in a really good spot. The Void energy type can take advantage of some of the best perks and synergies. Rewind rounds is great for mowing down enemies, and it'll save you some time not having to reload, but I think we can afford to take reload speed into our own hands when we have something like destabilizing rounds in the same slot. This perk will vastly help our ability to crowd control and increase our damage while doing so. Applying Volatile also opens up the doors for a bunch of Void subclass synergies. So now that we have crowd control and a small bump of damage that helps us get kills, let's look at what else we can apply to go with that. The first things that catch my eye is Onslaught and Killing Tally. Although both are very good perks, the main thing that I consider when approaching this is that Onslaught increases our rate of fire, which thereby increases our DPS, but it also increases the rate at which we're blowing through ammo. Whereas with something like Killing Tally, we're increasing the value of each bullet instead, meaning that we get more out of the ammo that we have. The linear increased our damage based on the amount of stacks that we get, as well as the fact that it doesn't go away until we reload the weapon, means that we can actually stack this up to 3 pretty easily by taking advantage of destabilizing rounds. Machine guns are already known for how good they are at crowd control and mowing down hordes of enemies, so getting a 30% damage increase is likely going to be no problem, and you'll likely have a good amount of ammo left in the magazine after you reach that 30% to take advantage of it. That being said, we can also increase our magazine a bit by using extended mag, and then help our weapons range and stability by using something like small bore. I'd probably double down on the stability because I don't want to be missing shots at range due to poor stability, and then I'd probably throw on a major spec. That way when we're going through hordes of enemies and we're mowing down low tier adds, our transition to having to kill major enemies isn't going to be as harsh. Once again, here we're left with a very unique and capable weapon. I think it does a good job of fulfilling the role that machine guns are best known for at the moment within the meta. If you ramp it up, it can have some really good DPS potential, but overall it's just a monster when it comes to crowd control and clearing hordes of enemies. And that's why I'm gonna go ahead and throw it on our priority list. And as you can see so far, these weapons are already doing really freaking good, as the majority of them lie in our top 2 highest tiers. Our next weapon to look at is going to be the Midnight Coup, and man, this is one of my favorites. I'm just telling you right now, when it comes to PvE rolls, this is a top tier hand cannon. It is a no-brainer that you can lump this in with the likes of Fatebringer, and the fact that we're going to get retroactively enhanceable perks on this makes it that much more reassuring that it's going to be good in the long term. Not only is the god roll that I picked out for this weapon unique and extremely effective, but it can easily last the test of time. Much like it does with scout rifles, kinetic tremors only take 6 shots to activate with the hand cannon, and it plays a really awesome role in crowd control and increasing our damage with the hand cannon. It doesn't have a kill activation requirement. It's overall just a really strong utility perk that helps out with crowd control and applies some AoE to the weapon, let alone the fact that you just get better DPS out of it. When you're using your primary against a mini boss or a major, or maybe even a champion, this thing comes in clutch. Now another really popular combination with this is gonna be Firefly, but I want long range consistency and I want the 10 to 15% damage increase as well as the AoE bonus from explosive payload. And yes, this is looking very similar to our hung jury roll, but many of us are aware of the power that a 140 RPM hand cannon in PvE like this has. When you compare to things like Zeoli's Bane and Fatebringer, the Midnight Coup can hang. I would throw on extended mag just so that we have a little bit better DPS and can get more out of kinetic tremors before we have to reload. Then I throw on small bore for better stability and range, and then probably a reload speed masterwork to help out considering this is a primary weapon. Couple that with some armor mods and you'll be good to go. And then I do a minor spec, especially because kinetic tremors scales with the damage of your weapon, so if we're adding a minor spec, the shockwaves from kinetic tremors will actually benefit from that as well. That way, even if we're shooting a major from range using explosive payloads and kinetic tremors will help with our DPS on that major, but any nearby low tier adds will also suffer due to kinetic tremors paired with the minor spec. This is a beast of a weapon and it's probably one of the ones that it's easiest to say it goes in the top tier. I'm just saying, this goes in the kinetic slot and Fatebringer cannot get this role. It's very unique and I honestly think it has the potential to be the new best in slot. Don't miss out on this Midnight Coup. You're able to go out and get it right now, so keep an eye out, and I urge you not to be shy in attuning this weapon. Now the last weapon on our list to look at is the Succession. There's a lot that makes the sniper special, and I think taking that into consideration, as well as what gives it the best viability in the end game, is what I'm going to consider when it comes to crafting its god roll. When it comes to this first column, I immediately gravitate to Reconstruction. It's not a common perk, and it's one of the things that makes Succession great. As we move through this god roll, you're going to see how we're going to take advantage of this perk as it doubles our magazine and auto reloads it. Like I said, endgame viability is a very big thing, so our best damage buffs looks like it's going to be Focus Fury or Firing Line. Firing Line is definitely the better option in terms of pure damage output, but if you're not always going to be with 2 or more allies, or you're playing an activity where you're not going to have allies, it'd be smart to rely on a different damage increasing perk. Vorpal is a good option, but it only applies to mini bosses and bosses, so that's why I would go with Focus Fury. Especially because of Reconstruction, we get to double our magazine size, making it so that by the time we get halfway through our magazine, we still have a good bit to go through and take advantage of the damage increase. We can actually further that by using extended mag, so right now the magazine sits at 3, and with Reconstruction applied, we can boost that up to 6. This lets us take advantage of the damage increase on the last 3 shots in the mag, but we can take this further by applying extended mag, increasing the mag size by 1, making it 4, and increasing our potential total to 8. Take this another step further and apply backup mag to the weapon. That makes our new magazine total 5, making our new potential total with Reconstruction 10, meaning you can send off 5 shots and still have another 5 shots in the magazine that can take advantage of that damage increase. And that damage increase will be applicable to almost any enemy type in the game. You won't have to be nearby allies, you can use it solo, and it won't only apply to mini bosses or bosses. If you can, I would throw on Fluted Barrel for the extra handling, and same goes for the Masterwork. I would go for handling just because this archetype can be pretty slow. This leaves you with an extremely versatile weapon that can hang in the endgame in all kinds of different situations. And because of that, on the tier list, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the priority list. And there we have made it through every single weapon that's available from Onslaught. Up top here, these are all truly legendary weapons. So make these the top of your priority list, then go for these guys, then these guys. And if you happen to get this guy along the way, then shoot, more power to you. Take advantage of it. But there's not a single bad weapon in this bunch. Everything serves a purpose, and everything serves it very well. Thank you all for coming and watching and checking out this tier list. I know that some of my god roll picks aren't going to be the same as some of the other ones you've seen, or some of the ones that you might choose yourself. If that's the case, go down in the comment section and let's have a good conversation about some of these weapons. Now, just a reminder that at the time of the release of this video, not all of these weapons are currently available, so on screen I'm going to show the dates each of these weapons drop right now. Once again, it was great sharing my opinion with you guys. Hopefully this will help you guys know what you should be grinding for, and leave your opinions down below in the comment section. With so much cool stuff going on in the game right now, you know we have more content on the horizon, so stay tuned and peace out.
Goes good. Good job. Push in front of us on flat.
Oh, no way. I had to reload, bro. That's insane. I still on that shit.